Don't waste your time putting diffusion over flashes and small lights. Here's why. When photographers think of soft lighting, they're basically thinking of light coming from a softbox creating soft shadows. And what drives me crazy is when I see event photographers, wedding photographers, and basically anybody else using little diffusers on their flashes or their little LEDs or whatever, thinking that this is going to create a similar effect, that it's going to soften shadows. This does not soften shadows at all, and I'm going to bust these myths today once and for all because it's driving me crazy. All right, so I have two heads here, one to show the effects of highlights and one to show the effects of shadows. Here I've created a shape of a head with a brow and a nose, and right now you can see this has really soft shadows because this is what people think of as this right here. They don't think so much about highlights, they think about shadows. That's what people relate to when they think of soft lighting. And this is what people call hard lighting. And this is why I created this head here. It has a really sharp edge nose and brow so you can see the definition of the shadow. And that's what we're going to gauge how soft the shadows and the lighting is. On this one, we look for the hot spots, the bright spots. That's for the highlights. So again, this one is for the highlights. This one's for the shadows. So let's take a flash picture first without the dome. This is just hard light. There's the hard shadow. Now let's put the dome on it and look at that shadow. Is that any softer? No. What these domes are basically intended for is to shoot kind of like up diagonally at the ceiling and the walls. It just spreads light everywhere around. And then some of the light will come off the ceiling, some will come off the walls, and then you have a big giant light source all around you, and that kind of softens things up. But if you were out in the open or you're in a big giant space where there's nothing to bounce off of, and you just aim this right at somebody's face, you are not going to get soft shadows. This does not create soft shadows. This bounces light off of all kinds of things around you that then bounce back and create a large light surface. The bigger the light source is, that's what makes things softer. So you're basically creating the whole room into a giant light source. But if you were out in the open, and this is why I get always upset when I see people out in the open, outdoors using these things. This doesn't do anything. It just cuts your light down. It doesn't give you any soft shadows. Let's try Q100 flash. Here we are with the bare flash. Hard shadow. Now let's put the dome on it. Hard shadow. No difference in the shadow. So let's try a couple of these LED panels. They usually come with a frosted diffusion in it. Let's first use it without the diffusion. Okay, obviously some hard shadow and you have some specular highlights on the face. So let's put the diffusion in. This is a frosted diffusion. It's still pretty darn hard, isn't it? And as far as specular highlights, I think it just cuts down the light level. It doesn't really lower the specular highlights. All right, so that's a small panel. Let's get a little bit bigger. All right, this is a Nimoy YN303, just open with nothing on it. And now we're going to put the diffusion on it. And look at the difference in the shadow. This with diffusion, that's without diffusion. With diffusion, without diffusion. No difference, really. It just lowers the light. All right, now we're going to use a bigger panel, a Nimoy YN600L. Let's take the diffusion out first. Now this is just a bare panel with nothing on it, just bare light bulbs. Notice the shadow. The edges of it are starting to get a little bit softer. Look at the shadow on the wall. Things are starting to look a little bit softer and there's no diffusion on there. What makes something softer is the size of the light. All right, so let's put the diffusion on here and see what the difference is. Ready? This is without and that's with. Without, with. Without, with. Let's look at the highlights here on the highlights. That's without diffusion and that's with. Again, I think it's just lowering the amount of light, but it's not really knocking down the highlights very much, and it's not really changing the shadows very much. All it's doing is killing your light. Like I showed in previous videos, putting diffusion right over the light isn't going to do much. It's when you put the diffusion close to the subject matter. Look, see that? I'm just taking the same diffusion. Look at the difference. Without, with, without, with. But if I put it right on the light, like most people do, it's not softer. All right, so this is a frosted diffusion. What about a white milky diffusion? I'm going to use one of these panels here. Similar size to the one I just used before. It's just this one came with a milky white panel. All right, this is just a bare open panel, just nothing on it, just bare lights. The shadow is actually getting quite soft on the wall. Got a little soft edge here. This is not glamour soft lighting, but because it's a bigger panel, you're starting to get some of the effect on here. There's still kind of bright highlights on the face. Here's what happens when you put the diffusion right over the face. Look at that. So the milky white does create more softness when it's close to the subject. Let's put it right on the light. It's no softer. I mean, it really is a waste of energy and light to put this diffusion right on the light like that. I mean, it's better to just either have big diffusion closer to the person and further away from the light, or just have a bigger light source in general. Now, I know people say you get micro shadows from every single little light bulb creates a micro shadow on here. I don't know. I don't really see a bunch of little tiny, I mean, it blends together pretty well. I'm not too worried about that, especially when it kills your light almost down to nothing. So how do you make the lighting on a face softer? Well, you use a bigger light source, or you use bigger diffusion further away from the light and closer to the person. That way you get softer shadows, but this is not practical for people that are out on location, doing event photography, or you're just walking around. My best suggestion, like I showed in other videos, I showed you a bunch of different soft modifiers that you can put on flashes and stuff. One of them is a expandable little handheld softbox. They come in different sizes. This is a 24, whatever size you come. They weigh nothing and they're easy to walk around with. So let's use the Q120 that I showed earlier. Just stick it in there. Okay, that's with a 24-inch. And that's with a 32-inch. I only had it on a stand because I got to be working the flash camera, but the idea is that you can walk around with this thing taking pictures at an event. And there's smaller modifiers too that you can put on flashes and lights. I've made videos about those. All kinds of really interesting, cool, lightweight little things that give you much softer light. But the purpose of this video is basically to show you that these diffusers that come with these panels are basically worthless. All they do is cut down the amount of light. They do not give you softer light. Same thing with these stupid domes that people like to use. Unless you're in a small room with white ceilings and walls very close to you, these things, again, do not actually cause softer light. They bounce light off of things, but they themselves do not cause or create softer. That's a big myth. So if you got one of these pocket lights that comes with a white diffuser, don't think putting that on there is going to give you softer light, because it doesn't. I know you're going to use it anyway. I just had to say my bit.